Hey friends, Debacled Worm here, and posing a question to y'all. The question of impending doom for all things Destiny. And that question is, does Bungie use flawed data to justify nerfs? Now, uh, I was browsing through the forums earlier today, and I saw this post come up. And the post is entitled, Bungie uses flawed data to justify nerfs. Okay, let me pull it up here so y'all can see it as well. The creator of this post goes on to say that Bungie makes basically zone capture zones, such as Iron Banner, Capture Trials, stuff like that, then forces players to play Stasis or Void Titans, knowing good and well that no Titan is going to choose Behemoth, normally choose Behemoth or Bubble. They do this for months on end and then turn around and say that Bubble is overperforming and deserves a massive nerf. They go on to say that, the data's skewed, blah, blah, blah. And then they follow up with, basically some classes are underperforming, but there are no mentions of nerfs coming to these. No mention of buffs coming to these subclasses. And instead, Bungie focuses on nerfs. So I kind of wanted to offer my thoughts on this question because I believe there is some reason behind it. Now, first and foremost, it's important to know that Bungie doesn't nerf things based on usage. Okay, they nerf things based on basically the challenge that it has to other players. Think about things like, I don't know, I'm trying to think, shotguns, for example. Okay, shotguns early on were overperforming. And yeah, they were high in usage, but not everybody used a shotgun, right? No, a lot of people used, fusion rifle, sniper, stuff like that. The problem was that combating shotguns with these other weapons was very difficult. So they tuned shotguns down, a little bit to kind of match where everything is. And I still think shotguns are busted, but that's, video for another time, I suppose. But Void Titan usage rates probably had nothing to do with the nerf, and especially because Bungie has explicitly stated that bubbles are too oppressive to fight without another super. I mean, this I do have to agree with. I mean, I have been in roaming supers and go out to attack a bubble and I get killed before I can kill the bubble titan. Like, they are incredibly oppressive. About the only way you can shut down a bubble is if you have Thunder Crash, if you have Nova Bomb, something along those lines. So I don't think that, Bungie's necessarily making a bad call here when they're saying they're going to nerf Bubble Titan. Do I agree with it completely? That's debatable, but this video is not a debate on whether or not I agree with the nerf. This is a video talking about Bungie possibly using flawed data to justify these nerfs. Now, I think that the idea of a nerf happening is warranted to a degree. To a degree. I think, I don't have it pulled up here, but they're reducing the amount of health you get. You can take, normal amounts of precision damage, stuff like that, which I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know who's running into a bubble getting precision damage on a Titan in a bubble. But yeah, neither here nor there. The nerf, though, one of the big things in my opinion was the fact that they're nerfing Armor of Light to only give you 300 health instead of 425. And I think so many players are freaked out by that. But if you sit down and think about it, even if you run in there with a slug shotty and get a headshot, you're not going to kill him. Okay, slug shotties deal, I think, 288 damage to the head. So realistically speaking here, I don't think you'd kill a Titan. Yeah, you'd take him to red health for sure, but it's not like Titan's getting nerfed into the ground. It's not like the bubble is just getting absolutely dunked on, pooped on, whatever you want to call it. It's not like the Titan inside are going to be absolute glass houses or anything like that. Because back in D1, prior to, the addition of Armor of Light being part of the base subclass in D2, that was a situation where, it was scary to be a Titan. Because even in your bubble, a shotgun user could run in there and just shotgun blast you if you weren't using Armor of Light. And let's be honest, most people preferred Blessing of Light or Weapons of Light. But that's kind of my thoughts on this. But there is, however, I believe another reason why Bungie does this. Why Bungie, nerfs things like this, blah blah blah, that don't seem to need a nerf per se. And I think that it is because they want to shift metas. Now, here's the thing: if Bungie never tuned subclasses, we would still be in a Hammer Titan, Dawnblade Warlock, Spectral Blades meta. Okay, subclasses, they need tuning and stuff like that, because you gotta force out the old ones to bring in the new ones. I mean, look at Dawnblade. Dawnblade is a prime example. Dawnblade used to dominate the Crucible. It used to be incredibly difficult to combat, because I mean, you're flying through the air, you're throwing these one-shot kill semi-tracking blades at people from the sky. It was very, very oppressive and very, very overperforming. So they nerfed it so that, other supers could rise up. And now we've seen, hey, Dawnblade's been out of the meta for a long time, so let's buff it up. Let's bring it back to the fold. And that's what they did. They have, they've decreased the amount of super energy that throwing one of the blades requires, and did some other small changes that are going to inevitably bring it back to the game. So I think that that's one of the reasons why Bungie does it. They want to keep the game feeling fresh, stuff like that. But I also think that there is another reason, and a commenter said this on this post, and that is the fact that Bungie wants to make this change to potentially keep our eyes closed to the fact that the content they make is incredibly limited. We get one big expansion a year, and then we get several seasons. In these seasons, it is always the same thing. It's a short quest, 6 to 7 weeks, maybe 6 to 8 weeks. You do some special mission, some repetitive mission, a very repetitive mission. There is some dialogue. About the only thing that changes dialogue. Okay, the dialogue changes, and then you get to the end of the season. There's some, special mission, something like that. There has been no new Crucible maps. We've got one since Witch Queen, which was Disjunction. Oh, and I'm sorry, and Cathedral of Dusk, which I would argue that Cathedral of Dusk isn't new. It was simply ported over from D1. And that's something that Bungie does a lot of. They port things from D1 to D2 and slap a new sticker on, Oops, my light fell. But that's not okay, in my opinion. And I feel like it's one of those things that Bungie does to pull a curtain over our eyes, because, hey, if we say we're going to nerf Bubble, people are going to whine about nerfing Bubble. They're not going to see that we, don't have much new content, that we haven't had any new content since X month or X season, that we haven't had a new raid since literally Vow of the Disciple. Okay, a year ago. And I'm not saying that raids need to be coming out every season, but I think that a raid / a dungeon needs to come out every other season for sure. I would say in an optimal situation, have a rotating thing. One season a new raid comes out, one season a new dungeon comes out, because raids and dungeons are, at the end of the day, the kind of the core of what players like. But we're getting kind of off topic here. I think that Bungie's lack of content is covered by nerfs like these, and that's that doesn't sit very well with me. So Bungie using flawed data to justify nerfs, I don't think it's flawed data. Again, we talked about the reason why being that Bungie does not base things based off of usage, is more on counterability, I guess you could say, counterability. But I think that the other reasons are, potentially to change the metas, number one, or number two, pull a bed sheet over our eyes. Now, that's not something I definitely say, oh yeah, it's definitely it. That's kind of a thought to put out there and see what y'all think about it. But it sounds believable, especially with the past year of Destiny. Like, the content has felt really dry. I mean, think of Season of the Lost. I think it's season 16, where we had 6 weeks of story content and then 13 weeks of nothing. And yeah, they added they added the new dungeon in and stuff like that, but that's not acceptable. Like, that season was brutally long. 6 months. A season that lasted 6 months, half a year, was incredible. And it blew my mind that Bungie did that. But regardless of that, that's kind of my thoughts on Bungie using flawed data. I think that it's intentional, but I think it's justified I think the nerfs are justified. But that being said, I do want to hear what y'all have to say in the comments below. So let me know what you think. Do you think that Bungie uses flawed data to justify nerfs? Or do you think that the nerfs that come to the game are, more so to shift metas? Or do you really think that, there's a wild chance that they could be to pull the bed sheet over our eyes so that we don't notice that we haven't been getting any new content in X amount of time or something like that? But yeah, that's kind of all I got to say about that. Go check us out on Twitch at twitch.tv/thewormkeeper. And yeah, bye for now, guys.